welcome to this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Sunny's guest this week is Alper. Al is the founder and CEO of Absolute Logic, an MSP based in Connecticut, and CyberGuard 360, a channel-only company providing advanced cybersecurity platforms to MSPs, MSSPs, and IT service providers. In his spare time, Al volunteers on several local community boards and commissions and many nonprofits. He enjoys a myriad of sports including racing, skiing, racquetball, and more. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Sunny, take it away.
Thank you, Todd and Al. Welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And I'm so excited about having this conversation with you because this is one of those topics which is so important. Cybersecurity is so essential to every single business. It's something that we all need to stay laser focused on, especially as MSP owners. So welcome, and let's get into this.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll be able to bring some value to the community as we go through this. So let's do it.
Thank you.
All right. So Al, with many MSPs making the transition over to MSSP, what are some of the key points they should be focused on going forward?
Well, that's a great question. Many MSPs get into the space as engineers. They are technical in nature. They geek out on new toys and love all of those things. And it makes them very good engineers. It makes them reasonably good business owners. Cyber is different though, because cyber, when there's a problem technologically, you can swap out a drive, you can swap out a main board, you can put in a new switch, you can program AD, you can do all kinds of things that quickly get to solve a problem. In cyber, it's completely different because the attack surface is so big, the number of holes that can penetrate the attack surface and then metastasize is it's so vast and so huge. Solving the problem is almost impossible. And if you look at the breaches about us every day, it proves how impossible it is when companies like First American or Experian or United Health or you name it, these 800-pound gorillas with tens of billions of dollars in the bank, if they can't solve it, the ability of an MSP to solve it for their client approaches zero. And so they have to look at it differently than what they would normally look at solving a problem in the IT space. They have to look at not in terms of solving the problem, but mitigating risk. And that's a completely different paradigm for MSPs because MSPs look to solve a problem. Mitigating risk and solving problems are two completely different things. And so it's a different mindset that they have to be prepared to undergo.
So Al, during our prep call, you mentioned a three-layer approach. Can you quickly go into that for our MSP partners here?
Oh, sure. So when we look at cybersecurity and we think about the attack surface, and just in terms of MSPs, the attack surface is your network, your environment, your servers, your workstations, your layer 2 and 3 devices. All of that footprint of technology is the way that MSPs tend to think of the attack surface. It's actually bigger than that, but let's stick with what the MSP's vantage point is. And so when you think about the attack surface, most MSPs, as I said earlier, they're engineers. They by trade, they love the tools and the toys and the new switches and all the gear. And so when they think of an attack surface, the very first thing they do is they employ really great technology. They put on next-gen endpoint protection. They put in a terrific firewall, maybe a full UTM, Unified Threat Management firewall that's at the perimeter. They drop in spam filtering, 2FA, all of the tools that technology can deliver. The problem with the attack surface and the problem with the holes in the attack surface, believe it or not, is that's the first layer that most MSPs go to, and then they set it and forget it. But it's also the least effective. in terms of mitigating risk, in terms of minimizing minimizing the holes in the attack surface. And they call in cyber terms, it's called shrinking the attack surface. Because the more you can button up, the smaller the attack surface gets, right? If you haven't touched anything, the attack surface is the entire organization. If you start to button it up, it starts to shrink a little bit, and the surface of the environment closes itself down. But adding technology actually closes a very, very, very little bit of the network or the environment down. I know some MSPs might disagree with that, but it's true. The above that is the human layer. And if you think about for a moment that 88% by a last study, I believe that was done in August, 88% of all attacks, successful attacks on an environment come by way of people. That's why phishing attacks are on the rise, smishing attacks are on the rise, vishing attacks. Smishing are SMS, vishing is voice, people calling up and gaining access, okay? So people, the bad actors are targeting people because social engineering works. People will do today what they did yesterday, and they'll do tomorrow what they did today. And so bad actors know the way people behave. And so they go after those people as ways to get into the environment. And once they're in, they can do anything. They can move laterally. And a lot of MSPs don't enjoy the tools of SIM or SOARs or even network monitoring tools like Alvik and Logic Monitor and Traverse, tools that are not inexpensive. And even if you want to employ them, you don't necessarily know what to do with them. And it's not because they're complex. It's because you've got all these other tools and you're busy managing an environment. And unless you have visibility through a tool that can aggregate and sort of distill valid and valuable information out of it, it creates a lot of noise, right? And so the human layer is the next layer up. So we talk about the three layers, the first layer being technology, the second layer being people. But even that's not the biggest hole in the attack surface. The biggest hole in the attack surface is the cultural layer. And the cultural layer of an organization is how a company thinks, feels, and requires people behave about security. How seriously do they take security? How much do they believe that they are the stewards of their clients' information? And if they truly believe that they're responsible to keep a client's information protected, they're going to make sure their people are trained. They're going to invest money in the right technology. I can't tell you how many MSPs that we speak to that tell us their clients or their prospects would never pay for that. They're going into it with a mindset, right, however right or wrong for a moment, that it's too expensive, that money trumps security. I would thoroughly disagree with that. I think the problem is that companies don't understand what the risk is. And it's up to the MSP or MSSP to enlighten them, to educate them, to train them into understanding why security is important. It's not a cost center. It's a market differentiator. And if you can do that, you can change culture. And the minute you change culture, everything else falls into place.
It's a perfect segue into talking about how to, have that initial conversation, as the organizations are making changes from the MSP to the MSSP and positioning security first. Sonny, let's pivot over to you. You have the MSP as well as the master MSP. How are you talking to your MSP customers about security today?
We added a lot more resources for our MSP side as well, and then started involving some experts like Al, where they specialize in security so that we have the best tools, we have the best education in terms of people. So doing a lot more trainings for customers, doing a lot of third-party tool assessments, and having some regular audits for these third-party tools that we use. So having those audits, having some QA processes, having a lot more education for internal users, and our small business customer users where they are educated. And it's a continuous education every quarter during our QBRs. And so we host those sessions, lunch and learn for our small business customers. And as Al said, it's not about just kind of setting up your technology once and then you need to be staying on top of this because bad actors will all that's their business, right? So their big businesses right now being built on cyber attacks, and they have a lot more resources. And now, especially, they are after MSP industry, and we have to make sure that we allocate enough resources and keep our technology best in class, our people education best in class, and have that culture of security first.
And Al, like IT by Design, you have Absolute Logic, which is your traditional MSP, as well as CyberGuard 360. How did you make the transition? How did you train your sales folks up on the Absolute Logic side to approach from that security first mindset?
Oh, that's a great question. And actually, it's a great question. It'll lead into not a great answer about that, but a great answer for MSPs and what they can do if they're serious about it. So CyberGuard as a company is actually born out of Absolute Logic. We decided to get into the security space really to make money, right? This was just about like, what can we do? The security's hot, or it's getting hot. There's a new regulation coming out first in the country, as a matter of fact, was coming out. We were squarely in the center of verticals that were going to be impacted by that regulation, and in the area of the country as well. And so, okay, how do we capitalize on this? And as we began to go down the road, one of the things, really some interesting things changed in the company. We started, the very first thing we did was, okay, if we're serious about this, what does security mean? Like, what is security? It's not just buying the right tool. Remember I said before, I was a geek. I am a geek, but I love technology. And the first thing I did is I bought all the cool tools. And as I start to go under the hood and take a look, I'm like, well, that's not really protecting me. I mean, because ultimately they're great tools, but if my people don't manhandle them properly, they're not going to do a very good job. And if you're not paying attention to them on an ongoing basis, they're useless. Because if you think about, looking at the Equifax breach from 2017, the way those bad actors got in is because there was an unpatched vulnerability, because somebody set it and forget it, right? Set it and forgot it. And so as we got deeper down the road of security, we realized this isn't just a one and done kind of thing you have to do. You have to be serious about this. This is something that you have to live and eat and breathe. And so the thing we did is we actually took a look at ourselves and said, okay, can we pass a security test? And one of the things I love about CMMC, the cybersecurity maturity model, that's reasonably new in the space, is it's going to force MSPs. And I strongly encourage every MSP to take a look at that model and get themselves measured relative to their cyber posture. If you want to get in security, you should be measuring yourself against that model, which takes NIST frameworks into effect and the risk management framework into account. And so that's really what they should be doing first. So what we did was, as we started to go down that road and we saw what we needed to do as a company to be more secure, and then more importantly, what was missing in the marketplace. So if you remember, I talk about 3 layers: the technology layer, which is the very first thing we did. And then the people layer, and yeah, we did some training, but unless it's an ongoing kind of thing, like it's kind of like high school algebra, right? You take it, or calc. Let's do calc in college. We all went to college. You took calculus. I'm 57 years old. I couldn't tell you a calculus formula if you said I'm gonna kill you if you don't give me a calc. I don't remember. And I got an A. I got an A in calculus. I mean, so I did great then, but I haven't used it in forever. That's training. Like, getting trained doesn't mean anything if you haven't stayed on top of it over and over. If you don't, it's use it or lose it kind of mentality. And so we saw a gaping hole in the landscape for ourselves. And that's literally how CyberGuard got started. We said, okay, there's a hole in the market. We're serious about this. I also own a development company, so I had my dev guys build this first iteration of PII Guard, with PII Guard 360 is our platform. I had built that first iteration, and we implemented it in Absolute Logic, and we started selling that as part of an overall solution in the marketplace. And in the first year, we had over 90 new clients. And we were closing 2 deals a week over the phone. 1 phone call, 2 deals a week, because we were selling a solution, not a product, a solution that we knew actually worked because we were actually doing it to ourselves. And my colleagues were like, how the hell are you closing this kind of business? And so I showed them what we were doing. They're like, I want to do that too. And if, you don't have to hit me with a bat for a light bulb to go off. I said, I guess we have a channel business. Let's spin it off. And we spun off CyberGuard, and we actually took the platform. We spent 1.5 years repurposing it so it was channel only and it wasn't tied to logic, and fully white labeled end to end. So when the client goes in, the MSP's logo is all over it, top to bottom, on every communication that goes out the door. And we've been, since we've launched, we've been very, very successful. So
Al, can you tell us a little bit more about the framework that you just referred to for MSPs, that at least they should look into this? What's this called, and how people can get more information?
Absolutely. So it's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model. CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And there are effectively 4 phases that you go through. Right now, they haven't even finalized the last phases. So to be fair, it's reasonably new. But phases 1, 2, and most of 3 are pretty much done. And what they are is a framework, and you get certified in this. It's a framework that you follow with controls in place that demonstrate that you take security seriously culturally. And it follows NIST. It follows NIST 171. It supersedes it in a lot of ways. And it does require outside third-party auditors to come in and evaluate you. So it's not an inexpensive effort by any measure, but it's also not terribly expensive. It's not, for even a small shop, it's a worthwhile investment to make if you're serious about security.
Awesome. Another thing, congratulations on your success there. Is a very similar story with IT by Design. And I love this. When you said, okay, we were doing this, and then your competitors, they started building their capabilities using CyberGuard, right? So with IT by Design, we built our NOC for our internal use to serve Wall Street with quality services. And then some of my peers, where I just helped them as a go-giver, and that became our kind of new business, which is then, more competitors, even from the tri-state area, they started building their capabilities in terms of NOC and dedicated talent using IT by Design. And that, so that's so, there is that alignment there when you talk about IT by Design and Absolute Logic. So thank you for sharing that. And back to you, Todd.
All right. So
we're entrepreneurs. We have no choice, Sonny, right? So we see an opportunity, we take advantage of it. We wouldn't be entrepreneurs, we'd be employees otherwise.
Yeah. And another thing that you mentioned twice is, technology background based entrepreneurs. And I call myself more like incidental entrepreneur, that I didn't wake up one day that I wanted to be MSP. I started doing more of exchange migrations just to kind of make some weekend money. And that became a little bit more, more calls for desktop support and a lot of other end user support calls. And then that became MSP.
All right, let's pivot a little bit. We've talked a lot about culture. We've talked about the services, but it takes talent. It takes people to deliver those services and do the training around culture and such. So, Al, obviously we're here September. Actually, now, oh gosh, it's October of 2020, and we're in the midst of this COVID pandemic. How has COVID affected how you approach talent as far as people working remote? Maybe the corporate world has had some drawdown, some great talent coming on the market. Has anything changed during COVID in terms of the cybersecurity talent?
Oh my God! So yes, it's gotten worse, right? Because everybody is sucking up cyber talent, and the reason is, if you think about it, the world went on vacation, not literally, but they basically all went home, right? And how do you take when you're within the four walls of an office? My office is over here, so I'm pointing over here. So if you're in the four walls of an office, you have a reasonable amount of control over your environment. I say reasonable because nobody has full control over their environment. I don't care who they are or what they say. And I give you the Great American Breach, and I can go down the road, right? Go down the list. So you have a reasonable amount of control. You know what technologies you have in place. You're watching your people and how they're behaving. You're monitoring the perimeter for that kind of traffic. You're doing all the things you should be doing. Now they're home. And they're operating on, God forbid, consumer grade net routers. And it's more likely the case than not. Not a lot of businesses sent their employees home and bought them all little firewalls to plug in or whatever we did, but that's us. And so this workforce has expanded beyond the four corners of an office to the four corners of people's living rooms and the four corners of people's kitchens. And so 10 employees, instead of being in four walls, are now in 40 walls. And 100 employees are in 400 walls. And so if you think about that, how do you protect it? And all of these companies started sucking up anybody who had any semblance of cyber knowledge. And sadly, some of those people don't have cyber knowledge, but they say they do. And to a layman, including lay MSPs, don't, because they're not in the space. Cyber is to IT what a heart surgeon is to a general practitioner. It is a specialty. And if you don't understand the attack surface, if you don't understand the threat landscape, if you don't understand the myriad ways in which you are exposed, you are flying blind. And unfortunately, so many vendors, and we are guilty of this too. So I say this with all the hubris of knowing that we are to blame as well. We sell product and we make it sound like it solves the problem. And ultimately, products cannot solve a problem. Only solutions can solve a problem. And so that's why they're sucking up cyber talent. I know I got off on a tangent. I was moving over to solution. So there's a dearth of talent out there, and it's very, very difficult to come by. When we are in market looking for talent, our two go-tos are, I look for people who are self-taught and certified. So, but meaning that they've gone to like ISC2 and they've gone through a self-paced certification program, because it tells me that they have a natural curiosity. Cybersecurity talent requires an innate curiosity, because as I said before, you can't solve the problem. And getting to the root cause to at least mitigate risk requires you have to have an innate curiosity. Wanting to know, how did this happen? How can I get there? What does this mean? So it's not just putting a Band-Aid on it. So root cause analysis, if you think about it, the root cause analysis is sort of where you dissect the attack vector and you down to where everything metastasized to. So that requires a natural Inspector Clouseau. I'm dating myself now. I realize that. Maybe Dora the Explorer. Sorry. To really want to understand it. So I look for people who are sort of freelancing. I love those people because they're curious, right? They're certified, they're self-certified. And then the other thing is I look for those who've come out of the military and they're looking to get into cyber. They are really, really good. They're good because they've been trained by some of the best in the world. They are terrific. They bring they bring processes that you don't even think of. There's a couple of websites that let me just see where one is. I have it in my. It's one of the ones that I call up regularly. So recruitmilitary.com. That's a good site to use to take a look at for recruiting people out of the military. The other one is hireheroesusa.org. Both of those are great resources to find those military, and I'm a big supporter of the military. So I love to shop in the military first, right? Give our heroes a job whenever possible. Great places to find talent if you can find them, but they're all getting sucked up by corporate America. So there is a dearth out there. If you find one, take them, get your hands on them, and don't let them go. And that's going to be really hard because they're going to be recruited by everybody.
So in that type of talent war, Al, is there anything specific that you do? So once you hire them, you train them on your way of doing things, right? Your way. Is there anything special that you're doing that worked for you in terms of retaining this top talent?
So what seems to work the best, and I say seems because it's really an evolutionary process, right? I mean, what works on one doesn't work on the other necessarily. But what seems to work the most often, for lack of a better term, is by giving them the latitude to be leaders. And so, like, one of the things that we do when we're onboarding somebody, when we're interviewing onboarding, we ask them to not just dissect the problem and do a verbal RCA, root cause analysis, where we go through a Q&A process, and then we ask them to document it. We then ask them to present to us as a client or a potential prospect, what mitigation scenarios that they would implement and why. Because what we're looking for is, do they have the leadership to do that? And if they do, then we give them the latitude to do that in the long run. And so by enabling leadership in as a part of our culture in them, they feel like they have a growth path. And they do, frankly, because if they're that good, everybody wins.
And is there any tool that you use to assess their skills when you're hiring? I mean, is there any assessment tool, online assessment tool that you use, or how do you assess them?
So we go through DISC, we do DISC tests, but those I've found they're effective in initial personality traits and behavior traits, but realistically we assess them through our own internal processes. So forcing them to write out what the RCA was, going through a Q&A with one of our CISSPs and one of our SCAs, asking them tough questions and forcing them, if they're going to be shy, they're going to be out of here. Like, I don't want anybody that's shy. Like, you have to be adaptable as well. Because, like, if part of our Q&A helps uncover something you may have missed, you have to be willing to take ownership. Okay, I didn't think about that, but now that I'm thinking about it, this is something we might want to consider. I love that. Because the fact that they're willing to admit they might be wrong and then start to see, what sinew is, right? It's the connective tissue, right? So their sinew starts to make this clarity where they're headed. That's awesome. And that's nothing you can find in an online. I've never found a test that says, this is the guy or the gal. I've just never found anything like that.
Security is such a fast-moving and expanding and changing space. Are there any particular online programs or organizations you found that are real useful for ongoing training of your staff?
So I'm a big fan of ISC2. So take a look at ISC. Let me just see what the website is. I know I have it here somewhere.
And for the viewers, all the websites and resources Al mentions, we'll make sure we make available to you in the video description.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's isc2.org. They really are a leader in the space. They have a lot of self-paced training programs. For those that aren't self-paced, there's a number of universities that are now getting into it. Harvard's got actually a great online course that you can take that is directed. So it's not self-paced. It is a directed course. And I know a lot of the trade schools have gotten into it as well. You know, I don't know enough about them to make any recommendations, but if you're doing something that you want your team to do, and I strongly encourage every MSP should at least have an SSCP on staff, because that's really an entry level security professional. That stands for System Security Certified Professionals, SSCP. And those are really designed for system administrators, and it gives them a perspective of security as they deploy environments and as they manage environments and as they go through the oversight of those environments, the upgrading. It really gives them a security perspective. CISSP, if you have the wherewithal to hire them and you've got a security practice that you stood up, you should definitely have a CISSP on staff. If you're in the healthcare, the HCISPP. In that, it depends on your verticals, obviously. All of those you can get through ISC2. There's a couple of other organizations out there that will do some trainings and certifications. I just think that ISC2 is top of their game for that.
All right.
And one experience that I want to share, Al, at IT by Design, we tried both, and we always try both, hiring from outside and then cultivating our own talent. And we do see a lot of our engineers, they are interested in, from career development perspective, career roadmap perspective, they want to grow into more of cybersecurity roles. And yeah, so we also had a lot more success developing our internal talent, using, having them go through some certifications, some trainings, than hiring from outside. Because when we recently, about a year ago or something, we hired 2 cybersecurity experts from bigger companies, and that's what we had access to. And what I have seen is people, one, they come with a lot of baggage, and kind of having them on board with your core values system and everything that you practice as culture is hard. Number 2, with bigger companies, there is a lot of room to hide. So when they come into a small business or small big business, there's not much room to hide, right? And from bigger companies to SMB environment, it's very hard for them to make that shift successfully. So what worked for us internally is cultivating that cyber talent in-house, promoting people from within, investing in people so that they can grow as cybersecurity engineers. What's your experience in terms of cultivating your internal talent versus hiring from outside?
So I completely agree with you. Cultivating internally, if you have the wherewithal to do that, then cultivating internally is definitely the way to go. 3 of our guys have undergone it. All of our guys will undergo it over time, because even for those clients in our MSP Absolute Logic that are not obligated to security, we are a security-centric MSP. And we believe in security. We take it very seriously. And so I want everybody to have, at the very least, they should have their SSCP. And so a level 1 engineer, when they become level 2 engineers, part and parcel of that process is to get the SSCP certification. So, and ultimately, and what I've also found is they all want to be they all want to be in the cyberspace. Like, that's like, it's the new toy, if you would, and because it's so big and so vast, there's so many places to go, and so many things that you can do, and every day is new and interesting. Every day is new and interesting. I can tell you that.
Yeah, there's a lot more interest in general here at IT by Design as well, and we use that as more of a reward system for best performers, because everyone wants to be a security expert. We are like, okay, so this is the criteria we're going to use to choose who is going to get, who's going to be next in line. Do you have any Do you have anything to share from the selling perspective? Do you want to make any point in terms of what MSPs, if there's anything MSPs needs to do, or you advise that they should do to sell security with success or having success in selling?
So one of the things we started doing something. So our PI, excuse me, our PII Guard 360 platform, PIIGuard360.com. That platform is so if you're thinking about the security stack, I don't mean to be all over the place, but so think about a security stack. We look at the security stack as having two categories of tools. One is the technology category, and don't think about the layers of security, but just think about the stack for a moment. The category of tools that are technological, and there's a category of tools we call the sensory category. And we call them sensory is because those are the elements of the stack that people interact with, right? They see it, they touch it, they use it. When you employ something like an antivirus program, you install it, and the only time a user even gives a damn or even knows it's there is when it pops up and says, hey, we stopped this from happening. Otherwise, they'd never see it again. Same thing about the firewall, same thing about, if you employ something to clean up the AD, whatever, it doesn't matter. The sensory stack is something they interact with regularly. So PII Guard 360 is a solution for the sensory stack. And the reason why I bring that up, obviously, is to push business, but realistically, it's because that's how you sell security. That's when you begin to sell a solution. Selling products is a race to the bottom. I say this all of the time. When you sell a product, if you go in and you say, I'm going to sell the best AV, great, what's it called? Well, it doesn't matter, it's the best. Yeah, but this MSP told me they have the best, and they're using Cylance. What are you using? So when you're selling a product, A, they're going to want to know what you have, and B, they're going to shop it around. Or at the very least, some other MSP who's trying to get in the door is going to say, that's actually not the best. The best is this, and it's 3 cents cheaper. Whatever it is, you are in a race to the bottom to close a deal. A race to the bottom meaning your profitability shrinks to zero when you sell product. Selling a solution solves a problem, and people are willing to pay anything to solve a problem. They're not willing to pay anything for a set of tires. They're willing to pay a certain amount for a certain solution being solved. You think about a car for a second. I want my car to be quiet. I want my car to be comfortable. And I want my car to go fast. It's going to cost me $70,000 to buy into that. If I just wanted a car and all I did was selling a car with no features, I can get one for $18,000. There are people that will buy the solution being solved. And all you got to tell them is what your solution is and what problem you're solving. So PII Guard is the sensory stack solution, if you would, that brings your clients or prospects along the sales cycle. So we always start with training. PII Guard gives away unlimited training as part of its monthly partner fee that includes weekly security shorts. Why do we do that? We do that because that is your entree into your client or prospect. It's also your entree into addressing the biggest hole in the attack surface, culture, because you're using training to change culture. And once you start to use training to change culture, you're no longer talking to the CFO about how much it costs. You're talking to the CEO about risk mitigation. It's a completely different conversation. And so you use training to educate the clients and prospects. And that's why, and it can't just be one and done. We talked about that before. College calculus, you forget about it. It's why we include the weekly security shorts. They do the awareness training, and then they do the weekly security shorts. The reason we do that is over time, you start to see trend analysis. So after 4 weeks how many users have opened the weekly shorts and viewed the weekly shorts. Now you can go back to your prospect or client and say, okay, your 100 employees, 40% of them aren't opening them anymore after 4 weeks. Of the 60% that are opening, 72% aren't viewing. And that information starts to speak to them at a business level. Now you're having a completely different conversation. You're starting to talk to the CEO about the company's culture. So if you really want to sell security, you have to sell a solution. And if you want to really make money selling a solution, sell into corporate culture of your clients and your prospects. And it's why we use training, because it's a simple way to do it that gives you hyper visibility into employee behavior.
Yeah, the car that you described, Al, that is Tesla. No noise, technology. And when you look at Tesla, CyberGuard is Tesla of cyber. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that. One last question I have before we close this. If I am a technology professional, I'm L2, L3 engineer, what I should be doing in terms of security certifications? Do you have any recommendations for technology professionals interested in learning more, growing, and certifying themselves for MSP space security engineers?
So I would start with the SSCP, which is a System Security Certified Practitioner. It's an introductory certification. It's basically an entry-level certification for security professionals, but it gives you a frame of reference relative to the work you're doing today as an IT professional. So it's designed for systems administrators to become familiar with security best practices relative to the administration of an environment and the setup of an environment and how to start to visualize it and view all of the data discourse that happens. Once you get that, then the next step should be a CISSP, which is a Certified Information System Security Professional. And that's when you become marketable. So SSCP is really is entry level, and that's a good starting point. CISSP is an opportunity for you to have really a marketable credential. And when I say marketable, I don't mean necessarily going to get a job elsewhere. I mean inside an organization, because there is upward mobility to those who are upwardly mobile. You can't be upwardly mobile without having the training to do that. And to some degree, the company is obligated to offer it to you, or at least offer you the path. So when my guys come to me and they say, I want to do this, well, that's already a good start, right? Because it tells me there's some motivation, some initiative. So that's a good start. And if they're willing to go through the exercise of this, I'm willing to ascend them.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. Thank you for sharing very, very valuable insights and technology, people, and culture focus. Technology, selecting your tool set, your products with, having that, best-in-class tools, best-in-class technology, and making sure that you have some kind of audit process with these third-party tools that every month or quarter, whatever the rhythm is, you want to go back and reassess to make sure that from the technology perspective, you have everything in place. And the people side, education. If it blinks, it stinks. Don't click on that. So that's what we tell our people, that, okay, if something is flashing on your screen and you were not expecting that attachment, or something is weird, it just looks weird, just don't click on it. And people education, not only internal, but your customers, is very important to make it as part of your QBR or the business review. I know there are different acronyms for this. Our MSP friends are using. So whatever you're using to have that customer engagement activity, please make security as a major part of that meeting agenda. And then culture. If you have the culture that is intentional about knowing where we are in terms of our security posture, and intentional about improvising every day, that's what it will take for MSPs to be successful and stay on top of their game. in terms of cybersecurity. And thank you again for joining us today. Thank you so much.
And I couldn't use a better word, intentional. You have to be intentional. It's not natural for an engineer to think that way. You have to be intentional. But at some point, intentional becomes what you do. It's like everything else, right? Over time, training settles in, and so great word.
Thank you, Al.
And Al, if one of the viewers wants to find out more about CyberGuard 360, or AKA the Tesla of the security world, what's the best way to get hold of you? Find out more, get the process started.
So our premier platform is PII Guard 360. So you can go to PIIGuard360.com and check the platform out. We're located here in Connecticut, so you can go to CyberGuard 360, which is the company's site overall. Phone number is 914-202-0227. My email is aalper@cyberguard360.com. That's AALP as in Papa, ER as in Romeo, at cyberguard360.com. And I actually answer the phone, believe it or not. So,
and if there is any issue with that information, you can always come to IT by Design, Build It You, and that's where Al is our partner in terms of education through our Build It University platform. His best practices, his frameworks will be available in our Build It You as well.
All right. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Sunny. And thank you, viewers. And we'll see you in the next episode.